started. This is the quarterly home visit form, which is a new form from a few months ago, Form ID 292. This quarterly home visit form is a composite and replaces the 4 individual quarter forms that were labeled first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. The reason for the form is the old form, the 4 separate forms, makes for too long of a list, too many places to see status, basically just too complicated. So let me start to navigate. We are here in our main page. I'm going to go to my Home tab at the top of the screen, and I'm going to navigate and select a home. This happens to be our test database, where we have a lot of just bogus information that we set up to check functionality. So I went to my Home tab, then I selected the home that I wanted to view, and then in the left navigation, I'm going to select Forms. I now have a list of forms in my right navigation, so I'm going to navigate over under the Home Management category, and I'm going to select New Quarterly Home Visit Form. I now have in front of me a list of instances. This is called the Forms Instance List. If you ever heard me referring to that, that is what I'm referring to. This is our Forms Instance List. This shows the instances of this particular form, and only this one. So the reason for the new form was to view status. With the old forms, you would have to go to 4 separate places in your right navigation to see how many instances had been done of each of these forms. With a single form, you can go one place and get a view of instances that have been completed, or at least have been started. You will notice here that you see first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and then, oops, I've got my latest instance doesn't seem to have a quarter showing. So let's drill in and start to look at that instance.
Anybody note that you haven't allowed in?
Yeah, I'm clicking them as quick as I see them. Okay, on this form, we can set up what are called heading fields. And if I select fourth quarter on this form, it will show up in my form instance list as the form applicable to the fourth quarter. So I'm going to do a quick save and continue, and that form is now saved. So the reason for the form, the old form makes for too long of a list, too many places to see, but it also sets alerts for the next quarter. The first quarter, when you completed it, you were actually really setting an alert for the second quarter form, the second quarter for the third, third for fourth, and on. This single form sets alerts for itself, the next instance of this one form, and you're not having to remember which quarter am I going to. When I navigate, I go one place and I merely pick the quarter that I'm in. So the next thing we need to do is talk about clearing up compliance confusion. And I'm going to do some little quick navigation in this form, and I'm going to scroll down to a particular area that I want to bring to your attention. This red note. Okay. Minimum standards requires that you review and evaluate each and every standard with a home every 2 years. So review and evaluate, very key pieces of information. So Casebook's quarterly visit form asks the question in that exact vein. Yes means the following standards have been reviewed and evaluated, as the red note says. So yes, you reviewed and evaluated for compliance. It does not mean that the home is actually in compliance, because the form allows for non-compliances to be detailed in a separate area, and our note goes on to say, deficiencies are noted in non-compliance section below. So to review, yes means you have reviewed and evaluated for compliance. It does not mean they are in compliance. That is noted below. Okay. So let's a quick review or a quick view of what we're going to be talking about today, and that's a fast scroll, and I apologize. Our basic topics are some basic form navigation, how to move around quickly and easily inside our forms. The second major topic is going to be, where does data come from? Some data is filled in by you, other data seems to just show up magically. We can explain that. And the last major area we're going to talk about is going to be the sequence of data entry, which is very critical in a database. So let us start with basic navigation. What I'm about to show you applies to all forms within Casebook. Anywhere you go in the system, any form you're on, you will have these tools available. We are going to start in the upper right portion of the screen by that Your Logo Here icon, where your logo will actually does show. First little logo we see, first little icon is this Table of Contents icon. We're going to click on the Table of Contents and it opens a small menu window. In this menu window, you can scroll up and down and find the portions of the form that you are looking for. This form we happen to be setting up as a fourth quarter form. So if I click on the fourth quarter, Casebook takes you to that portion of the form quickly. I can select any of the sections I want and get there quickly. I can then close and I can start working on that section. Okay? The next thing I want to show you is going to be the clipboard right below the Table of Contents. This is for task assignments. The basic tasks that we have set up are print, review, and sign. At the bottom of this window, you will see a task narrative. You can type in a custom assignment if you would like. If there is some more information you need to pass along. In the center area, you can decide who gets the task. And then you can simply click Save. And now you can see what tasks have been assigned and to whom they have been assigned to. You have the ability of creating a new task. You have the ability of deleting an existing task. Your users can resolve or reject these tasks. We give you the most tools you can to make this as powerful as possible. So that is Table of Contents and task assignments. The next area of navigation is at the bottom of the screen. You all have seen the Save and Continue, Save and Done, and Cancel buttons. Let's talk about these small arrow icons. The double arrow pointing up is a Collapse All Sections. We click that, and all the sections are collapsed so that you can quickly view your major sections. Let me show you how I would use that in this quarterly home visit form. Since I'm setting up for the fourth quarter, I'm going to collapse my sections, and then I'm going to hide the quarters that do not apply to me. And when I hide those, they will no longer print. So I've just saved paper. Now, when I go down and I expand my sections, which is our next icon, the double arrow down, the only sections that are expanded are the sections that are not hidden. So if we scroll slowly down, we will see that first, second, and third quarter are in fact collapsed, so I get straight to the quarter that I'm looking for, the one that applies to the form that I am currently filling out. The next two icons, the double arrow up with the arrow up with the double line, it is a shortcut to the top of the page. The arrow with the double line pointing down is the bottom of the page. Quick ways to move around inside the forms. Okay. The next little piece is some of the icons that are within the form, in our work area. And the first one I'd like to talk about is the section Collapse, Expand, and Hide, which I did show you, but let me show you how easily it is, how I can use some of these features. Table of contents, first quarter, close that, unhide it, and then expand it. And I move there very quickly. If I want to rehide it, collapse it, hide it. If I want to move someplace else in the form, go back to my table of contents, and let's go down to our non-compliance area. And I've moved around in this form without a great deal of clicking and a great deal of scrolling. Okay. The next feature I want to talk about is these cute little flags. I like my little flags. These little flags are what we call reviewer's notes. These are little electronic post-it notes that can be attached to any field in the system. So as a reviewer, you may have a particular question about why wasn't this filled in? Is this date correct? Please review the data here. You can input, and I love this, blah, blah, blah. It's about as deep as I get on clinical issues. And you can save it, and now you will see this field has a note on it. And we go down and we scroll to another one, and we can even put it on a section heading. And we can save another note. And we can go down to, let's say, one of our compliance fields, and we can put another note, and we can save that as well. So now we've got multiple notes in this form. So I'm going to shoot back up to the top, but I need to do one more thing, and I need to save and close this form, because I want you to pay special attention to this little flag just to the right of the title of the form. When I do a save and done, this form closes. I can go back into this form, and now that icon is changed. And it now alerts me to the fact that this form has notes attached, and I might want to look at those. Well, if I click this little icon right here, it's going to list every note that has been attached to this particular form. If I want to go look at that particular field, I click on it, and Casebook takes me to that field, and I can add another message if I choose. That's our little flag icon. The next little icon is the history of changes, the cute little books, those little book icons. These little icons, I can click on that and I can see when that piece of data was put in, who put it in, and what the value was of that piece of data. So if you're wondering, did my form get changed? Did some data get corrected? You can look at the history of any field and see who did what when, so that you're aware of your forms and their history. The next little icon is the user templates, which only apply to text fields, text box fields, and I need to scroll down and find one. There's got to be one in this form. And look at me scrolling, silly me. Let me use my table of contents to get there quickly. This little computer disk is what that is. That is how you would create a template. This field happens to already have a template created because that's what these little lines mean. Let me show you how to create a template, because this one isn't there. I click in the field and I type. There's my text. If I want to create a template out of it, I click the little icon and I just created a template. And then I can close. Now both of these fields have templates. To use a template, I click on the template and I can select it and it places that data in the box. But I can still edit that data if I so choose. Templates are specific to users. So every user in Casebook can have their own individual set of templates. Okay, that is basic navigation and some highlights of some of our shortcut navigation features. The next area we want to talk about is, where does data come from? So we're going to work our way through the upper portion of this form so that you know, where does this information come from. There's two basic types of data. You have displayed data and user input data. Your displayed data is what we think of as auto-populated. And generally, all data has a single point of maintenance. That is to say, a person's name should only have one place where it's maintained and corrected. We wouldn't want you going 14 different places in the system to update this type of data. And this auto-populated fields are what we call master fields. This is data that's used throughout the system, such as a name, an address, a phone number, these common data points. User input data, this is those text boxes, those date fields, those radio buttons, those checkbox lists, where you're making a selection or a choice. Now, here is a note, just to let you know that there's no minimum standard requirements for some of the data that I'm going to show you to actually print on the form. We show it to you for your convenience. And I'll give you an example is the residents in the home. We show you that list so that you're aware, but we do not print those on the forms to save paper down the road. Okay, so let's start working through this form slowly. This basic information section, that name, the home name, the phone number, the address, the certification date, the home type, the data source for this type of information is the home face sheet. Once it's entered on the face sheet, it is in the system. It can be changed on the face sheet, but it won't change old instances of forms. And I will be reviewing the data entry sequence next after this section. So your basic information, remember, is your face sheet, is the start and the basis of all of your data in the system. The next little piece of this form is the persons living in the home, including children in care. So the client list, the data source for the client list is system generated, and it comes from the placement forms that y'all have filled out. The initial placement, subsequent placement, any of those tracking forms where you're moving a client from one home to another. Every time you fill out one of those forms, that client is attached to a home, and Casebook knows it and is displaying that information in this form for you. The next little piece is the non-client persons in the home. The data source here is foster home people in your left navigation. If we go left navigation, people. Well, we're not showing you all of the people. We're smart enough to know we're only showing you people that are occupants of that home, because that's what's pertinent. As standard state, you have to see everyone that lives in that home at least once a year. So Casebook shows you who you told us is in the home, so that then you can be reminded and hopefully meet those requirements. So we'll go back to forms. We'll go back into my fourth quarter. And then we will scroll. Oh, why are we scrolling? My goodness, we don't need to scroll, do we? Let's go to the next section, the due date section. Okay, the data source on the due date section, home, is from the home compliance checklist. And we show that to you right here. This is your data source. If you fill in the dates under the home section of the home compliance checklist, we will show you those dates. Once again, there is no compliance issue that these print on the final form, but we show them here for your convenience, so you don't have to look someplace else. The vehicle section comes from the same form under the section for vehicles. The pets come from the same home compliance checklist under the pet section. That's your data sources. These are the areas where we are combing through the system and pulling out the pertinent data and presenting it to you to save you time and trouble. Okay, the next and the final piece to this little webinar is where or is your data entry sequence. What do I enter it and when? How do I make my quarterly home visit form right? Why is something amiss? I corrected it on the face sheet, but yet my home visit form is showing incorrect data. There's a sequence of events that needs to happen when doing data entry. And the reason is, it all boils down to the final fact of our forms are historical records. So that when that form is initially saved, for that very first save, we freeze the master field data that was brought into that form. We freeze the client list that was brought into that form. We freeze the non-client residents that were brought into that form, and we freeze all the data that was brought in from the home compliance checklist. It is what it was the point in time when you first saved the form. Now it's a true historical record or snapshot of that home record when that form was created. So how do you make sure that that initial snapshot is in fact correct? Let's walk through the steps. First thing, your face sheet. This is the origin of all master field data. Make sure your face sheet is correct and as best you can complete. Put all the data in that you can that's applicable. You will be surprised where it will show up in forms. Secondly, client placements. Make sure your clients' placements are up to date, that your tracking forms have been done, that the right children are attached to the right homes. And then we will be able to show you correct data. Number 3, foster home people. That little bitty property resides in the home, that little checkbox. Make sure that you've got the right people in the home, and in fact that you've got all the people in the home as you know them, as they are current, and that that little checkbox resides in the home is checked. Number 4, your home compliance checklist. Complete that checklist. Make sure that checklist is up to date. Only then, when you've done the first 4 steps, you are ready to start your quarterly home visit form. You can now open that form up, you can input that first little piece of data, and you can save it. And that data is now captured and frozen in time, but then you have your time now to go complete your work. Fill out all your text box, check all your little radio buttons.